All right, so you want to take a deep dive into Mike Pompeo, huh? Well, we got some stuff here for you. Articles from Vox and Wired, and then this like massive investigation from Drop Site News should give us plenty to talk about.
Yeah, and looking at all this, what really stands out to me is all this hypocrisy surrounding Pompeo. I mean, it's almost like his whole career is built on the same stuff he used to criticize people for.
Just thinking about his time in Congress, right?
Yeah.
Going after Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, all that.
Exactly. Like all those accusations he threw around, then years later he's facing the same kind of stuff. Allegations about stonewalling Congress, misusing resources at the State Department. Like it's almost poetic in a weird way.
Yeah, total deja vu.
Yeah.
And then there's that press conference in 2020. He's like practically laughing about a second Trump term, even though the election results were pretty clear. I mean, what was that all about?
I think that moment really made people question if he actually believes in democracy. I mean, here's the Secretary of State, and he's undermining American democracy. And it gets even weirder when you look at what Wired said about him criticizing elections in other countries. Like, he's got one set of rules for the U.S. and another for everyone else.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now they're saying he might be back in Trump's cabinet, maybe even Secretary of Defense. But even some of Trump's people are pushing back on that.
Yeah, it's like a power struggle is going on. Some people want Pompeo back, and then you have people like Donald Trump Jr. and Tucker Carlson who are totally against it.
And Drop Site News goes deep on why those guys might be so against Pompeo. They have some pretty wild stuff in there. Like Carlson saying Pompeo has a sinister persona and even accusing him of planning to kill Julian Assange. Like that's straight out of a spy movie.
Yeah, if that's all true, it's a pretty disturbing picture of Pompeo.
Makes you wonder about his judgment, what he's really after, and just his character in general, for sure. Okay, let's move on to Ukraine. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy with Trump and Ukraine, but Pompeo seems to have some shady stuff going on there, too.
Oh, yeah. Like his recent board membership with Kyivstar. That's a big telecom company in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it just brings back all those attacks Trump made on the Bidens for being involved in Ukraine. It's like they switched roles or something.
Right. And then there's Pompeo's Trump peace plan for Ukraine. He put that out in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
But it's super aggressive. It goes against everything Trump said about wanting peace in Ukraine. So which Trump are we supposed to believe?
Yeah, that peace plan doesn't really seem like it's about peace at all. It's more about taking a hard line. And it makes you wonder if there are any conflicts of interest there, especially because Pompeo's co-author on that, David Urban, has some lobbying connections to Ukraine.
Speaking of lobbying, we can't forget about Pompeo trying to help Nippon Steel take over U.S. Steel. Both Democrats and Republicans are against it. Even Trump himself. It's kind of weird since Trump ran on that whole America First platform. What happened to that?
It definitely goes against what he was saying. And it shows how hypocrisy can exist even within Trump's inner circle. It seems like loyalty and personal gain can be more important than their actual beliefs sometimes.
So Pompeo's going against Trump on this business deal. But when it comes to Iran, they're totally on the same page, super hawkish.
Yeah.
But there's this rumor that a second Trump administration might be less confrontational in the Middle East. So what would that mean for Pompeo?
Well, Pompeo's whole stance on Iran is tied up with his relationship with the MEK. That's a controversial Iranian opposition group. He's given speeches at their events and been paid for it, which makes you wonder about his ethics and if they're trying to influence him.
Wait, remind me about the MEK again. What makes him so controversial?
Well, they're this Iranian opposition group with a really complicated and kind of messed up past. People have accused them of all sorts of things, like being a cult and doing violent stuff.
So Pompeo is hanging out with this group and at the same time saying we should change the government in Iran. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It definitely raises some red flags about his judgment and if he's willing to use dangerous methods to get what he wants. His relationship with the MEK and him constantly saying we need regime change in Iran is a pretty worrying combination.
It seems like everywhere we look with Pompeo, there's contradictions and shady stuff and potential conflicts of interest. Wired even used the word hypocrisy to describe him. It's like he's always playing some kind of political game, always trying to get ahead.
Yeah, and the big question is what's motivating him? Is it his actual foreign policy beliefs, or is it just ambition and being loyal to Trump? Does he even care about ethics and doing the right thing?
Well, this is just the beginning. We've got a lot more to uncover here.
You know, we were talking about Pompeo and the MEK before.
Yeah.
It's not just that it looks bad, it's also about what could actually happen because of it. Like, he wants to change the government in Iran, and he's got this close relationship with this group. It's just making things more tense in that whole region.
So you're saying this could actually lead to like a real conflict? Not just political stuff, but like actual fighting.
Exactly. He's making it harder to find peaceful solutions to problems. It's dangerous what he's doing. And the Iranian people and the whole area could end up suffering because of it.
That's scary. And what about here in the U.S.? What about the State Department?
Uh,
I've heard things haven't been good there under Pompeo.
yeah, unfortunately, that's true. He's all about being loyal to Trump, and he doesn't really care about the career diplomats who work there. It's hurt the State Department's reputation and how effective it is.
So he's basically ruining the place he's supposed to be leading.
Right.
It seems like choosing loyalty over experience and knowledge is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it really makes you worry about what will happen to American diplomacy. I mean, if the State Department is weak, it means we can't really engage with the rest of the world as well. And that makes it harder to get what we want through diplomacy.
So basically what Pompeo is doing is having a big impact, not just on places like Iran, but also on how America deals with other countries.
It's something to think about. And it shows why it's so important to look deeper than the surface. Ask the tough questions and make sure our leaders are actually doing what's best for everyone. We can't just let them get away with whatever they want.
It's like he's so busy playing the game that he forgets real people are affected by the choices he makes.
That's a really important point. We can't just focus on what Pompeo does. We have to think about how it affects people, institutions, and the whole world.
Okay, so we've talked about all this stuff with Pompeo. His changing positions, the shady deals, the MEK, his actions and what they've caused. What's the main takeaway here? What does it all mean?
I think it shows a worrying trend in politics today. It's like personal ambition, political maneuvering, and ethics are all getting mixed up. Power seems to be the most important thing.
So are we supposed to accept this? Is this how politics works now? Are ethics and principles just something you can ignore?
Well, that's the challenge we face as citizens. We need to hold our leaders responsible, pay attention to what they're doing, and demand that they're honest. We can't let them put their own ambitions and political games above what's good for our country and the world.
It's a lot to ask, but I think you're right. We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to be informed, ask the difficult questions, and demand better from our leaders.
Exactly. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about these complicated things, the better we can deal with them and make good choices.
So let's keep digging deeper. What else should we be thinking about as we try to figure out what's going on here?
I think it's important to ask if what Pompeo is doing actually lines up with what America says it believes in. Is he just doing traditional foreign policy in a different way, or is he something completely new, like a product of this crazy time in politics?
That's a great point, and it makes us ask a really important question. What kind of leader do we want representing America in the world?
And that's where you come in. As an informed citizen, you have the power to look at the information, think about it, and decide for yourself what you think about Mike Pompeo and what he's done.
This has been a really deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore. We've been talking a lot about what Pompeo's actually done,
Yeah.
his policies, what happened because of them, all that. But I'm kind of wondering about the why now. What's his motivation? Is it ideology or ambition? Is he just super loyal to Trump, or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think it's an easy answer. But if you look at his career, you can see some patterns.
Like what?
Well, he's definitely ambitious. I mean, look at his path. Congressman, CIA director, Secretary of State. That shows you something. And the fact that he might end up back in Trump's cabinet means he probably wants to keep moving up.
But ambition's not always a bad thing, right? Lots of politicians are ambitious and they get things done.
True. But it's how you use that ambition that matters. And with Pompeo, it seems like he's willing to bend the rules or even break them. He'll choose loyalty over doing what's right. And he uses his power to help himself and his friends, even if it hurts other people.
Yeah, we saw that with the MEK and what he did in Ukraine and how he ignored all those experienced diplomats at the State Department. It's like he's playing by a different set of rules.
And that brings us back to his legacy. What will people remember him for? Will it be his tough stance on foreign policy or his connection to Trump? Or will it be something more complicated, like a warning about what happens when someone gets too ambitious and doesn't care about ethics and politics?
It's hard to know for sure, but I think our listeners have a lot to think about after this deep dive. We went beyond the headlines and the easy answers to try and understand this guy and what he's all about.
And that's what we're trying to do, right? Give you the information and the context so you can make up your own mind. Mike Pompeo is a fascinating and, honestly, a pretty worrying figure in American politics. His story's not over yet. But the choices he's made, the people he's aligned himself with, and the impact of his actions are going to be felt for a long time.
So to everyone listening, keep digging, keep asking questions, and don't stop thinking critically. We live in a complicated world, and understanding people like Mike Pompeo is important if we want to make sense of it all.
And remember, informed citizens are what makes a democracy work. Your voice, your thoughts, your willingness to get involved. it all matters.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Mike Pompeo. Until next time, stay curious.